Gotta ask, John, what are you thinking about the story of zombies right now following the ending of The Reckoning, looking at BO6 as a whole, jumping into, BO7 with the return of the original characters? What do you think's up with the story? Will we get to a point again? It's kind of like Cold War where the intel and the lore is real rich. It's kind of leading somewhere. Or do you think we're in a much different era right now for narrative as far as COD Zombies?
I think we're in a different era, DK. And I don't want to admit that, but just the way that BO6's narrative has gone, it's been very disappointing. Like, there's a lot of theories out there on like why BO6's narrative this year was like weaker compared to like Cold War. Certain members that created the intel system and wrote all that no longer there, working for DICE. Rumors about Craig Houston, how much involvement he had. But yeah, like this year, narrative has definitely probably been one of the weakest that we've ever had. And it feels very strange because it almost feels like this game was just filler to get us to BO7. There's a lot of stuff that happens in BO6 that could have happened way quicker, way sooner. Because theoretically, after Terminus, we just go on a fetch quest for like 2 maps where we don't really get much dialogue. There's not really like any like narrative that we get that is like game changing. Like Craft, there could have been so much more. Like we could have had maybe one more map with him, or even just the closure with Craft be a little bit better. The fact that that's brought up in Shattered Veil, and there's in front of Richtofen, and there is like nothing. It's just not. You know what I mean? Like, it's just very, like, disconnected. I don't really get it. And then, obviously, the 2 boss fights and the 2 endings, we don't know exactly which one's canon. But then you could also be like, well, does any of this even matter? Because are we even going to deal with Director Richtofen ever again? Because we're in the Dark Ether now with this new crew of characters. Like, I think, like, the sort of knee-jerk reaction to them coming back was definitely not what Treyarch expected. I'm sure they were expecting people to be like up from their seats, like clapping, applauding, like, whoa, I can't believe these guys are back. It's more like a case of like, these guys sacrificed themselves for the good of the Ether storyline. Like, we all understood why they had to die, and like that needs to be like honored. And I think like, the knee-jerk reaction is like is crazy that these guys are back, and I don't think the reception was positive. But I think now that there's been a little bit of time, they've mentioned that they're going to explain a little bit more in the reveal on the like narrative of these characters. The fact that in the intro they are quite human and normal, and then in the screenshots they obviously got all these weird dark ether veins and stuff. There's clearly like a little bit more thought process going on narratively as to why they get that, and I think that might tie into like how that will make sense. If they can make it make sense and it actually make some narrative sense, then fair play. I've seen some theories that potentially like Sam in the Dark Ether had these memories of these old characters, and so she managed to create them. Hence why some of them have the stereotypes of Ultimus, Nikolai looking like Primus. Kind of like this is like a snapshot of her memory and what she remembers of those characters, and sort of brought them back to life to help her escape. If that's the case, then I think that's probably one of the like best ways that they can bring them back in a way that doesn't tread on what has been in the past and sort of undoes the tag ending. But yeah, I think they've really got a bit of an uphill battle with this game to kind of prove to the community that they can actually tell, meaningful story and narrative that makes sense and doesn't have any gaps, and is also like meaningful story that adds to the storyline right now instead of just more threads that don't make any sense.
Introducing new character, introducing new artifact. We saw that a lot with BO6.
Yeah, it's just like it's a lot of like jangling keys. Like, hey, we're gonna bring chaos stuff back, but we're actually not really going to. And then here's this thingy mabob, and then here's this device that Richtofen uses, and
Never
heard of again.
Yeah. I think that the Terminus ending cutscene was so hyped, dude, because you're looking at it, you're like, wait, Craft, Sentinel Artifact, Ravenov. You're like, dude, Man,
Avalon, yeah.
I think that the narrative was like for BO6 was the strongest, like right before Citadel. Like there was so much hope there. But what you mentioned about the memories is really interesting because it kind of reminds me of what I'm sure is like the liminal spaces from Shattered Veil, where it's like memories and you're kind of seeing this, seeing that. I think that if you tie all that together a little bit with the bow, I think that could at least help, explain how they're back. But like you said, it's like it should have been a moment like the Kang gif from Ant-Man where it's like everyone's like, yeah, everyone's getting up in the stadium and like shout, you know what I mean, like it should have been that, but it's just like BO6 wasn't a sequel to Cold War narratively the way it should have been, the way it could have been, right? And as a big nerd myself, like I was thinking about, we talked about this the other day, I forgot who Jared and I were talking to, but we were in a call with some friends. I'm like, dude, it should have been this case where, like, I know this is like super Reddit, but I don't know, Sam or Richtofen back in the Dark Ether, one of them finds the construct, they become the Archon, they're like a god, and then you either work with them or against them, and then there's just so many connections you could have made to that world building of Vanguard, or the fact that Ava Jansen was teased at the end of MW3, and that's actually for BO7. It's like, dude, there's so many ways they could have tied all this in, and then you see the Forsaken just, die in a side quest.
Hope it's for BO7,
yeah. I mean, you hope so. Yeah, it's just all these things. There's so many like great like ingredients that could make a truly interesting meal here, like a real crazy recipe. And it's like you guys were saying, it's like you keep getting these keys jingling in your face, these threads that go unsolved. Like I think there was just such better ways to tie everything together. Which sadly BO6 didn't really do at all. It kind of introduced more things that BO7 has a lot to kind of unpack now. But then you bring the OG characters back in. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever maybe get an answer to like what season 3 or 4 of BO7. Like, yeah, which ending was canon? Did we help Sam? Did we help Richtofen? Does it not matter? Like it's crazy how like the connections we have to the OG story, which was through Eddie and through Sam, they're both either gone or dead. And now we have a new Richtofen and a new career. I think it would have been cool if like director Janice Richtofen joined Dempsey, Takeo, Nikolai, but that's a whole other topic. I mean, it's just there were so many ways they could have went, man. But and then I know I saw comments about Victus in chat, like, yeah, we're getting a Transit remake. Probably no Jet Gun and no Victus. That's crazy too. I mean, maybe hopefully get like a Victus Easter egg. They got done dirty in tag, man. So
yeah, and no Jet Gun as well, probably because we got it in Liberty Falls. It's like, why would they bring it back again? That's a thing. And then, as you were saying, DK, it's like also a lot of BO6, like the payoffs didn't happen at all until Reckoning, and then even then, the payoffs weren't really payoffs. It was more like, okay, we're finally getting some juicy bits now after that Liberty Falls intro cutscene, which really was Shattered Veil's intro cutscene. It's like, okay, we're finally in Edward Richtofen's office. We get the snow globe. That's clearly with the Revelations house in, and then like part of the Easter egg, we're like seeing photographs of all these items, and it's just like out of nowhere, it's like, whoa, okay, Monty's scarf is suddenly canon, Takeo's katana is now canon, all this stuff, and the thing that frustrates me as well is like, it's like it came out of nowhere. At the same time, Treyarch can be like, well, you think it came out of nowhere, but we actually brought this stuff back in 2021 because Sam was wearing this all when she came back out the Dark Ether in Firebase, but we just didn't explain it. We just were like, yep, she's just got all this stuff on her, and we just will never explain exactly why. And then finally in Reckoning, it's like, okay, well, yeah, all that thing that she had, it was this, the scarf was this, it was this. It's just like, it's just very strange how they did that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, God, man, the potential that was there, which I guess they still have time to, I think, clutch a little bit more narratively, but it would be sad if like the narrative of BO7 is like just about the same as BO6 as far as like the scale and depth, and then you're just
but now you're involving characters that people have a very deep connection to, and Dempsey, Nikolai, I think I think it'll be nuclear on a level that we worse than BO6. We're like, okay, there's nothing really going on with Carver or Gray or Maya, but if people are like, okay, there's nothing really going on with Nikolai, and I think that's going to be a much more mainstream conversation than it already is. Negative conversation, I think, if they aren't handled appropriately.
Yeah, because with the story overall, it's like, it's kind of like they played that card almost too early, I mean, it didn't have to be this early if BO6, had a stronger narrative, but like, the Verdansk card for Warzone, the Ultimus card for Zombies, like, kind of didn't need to play it yet and until we built more to it. But yeah, what about, I know you tweeted about Blanchard, John, it's like Blanchard and Panos' arcs were just down to unneeded Wonder Weapon upgrades in Reckoning as well. It's like that could have went somewhere, and maybe it still can, but
yeah, that was really frustrating. Like, I don't think anyone would have ever put on their bingo card like, oh yeah, these characters are finally gonna get that storyline, that closure, but they're gonna be turned into wonder weapons and be sacrificed. It's kind of like, whoa, that is just weird.
If you really think about it, the Easter egg of Liberty Falls really doesn't mean anything because Panos getting out of the Dark Ether is not even relevant to the main Easter egg at all for Reckoning. So yeah, that's another excuse, or maybe another example of things maybe change. There's a direction things are going to go, and maybe they got forgotten about or not picked up on. But yeah, I think having those two characters that people people really latched onto at launch, Blanchard especially, to just be like, their storylines kind of just get reduced into a non-essential Wonder Weapon upgrade. And that's not even needed for the Easter egg. I think that's
even if it was, even if they were, it seems like Cold War. I'm sure you guys probably agree. Like Cold War was, I mean, obviously with the pandemic circumstances, had like some real different development, some different obstacles. But the game felt like, hey guys, give us a chance. We're kind of soft rebooting in a way. Give it time. We're doing some serious lore building and world building. Let it pay. And then Vanguard was like, okay, the gameplay wasn't all that, but like the quests of Shino Numa and Archon were pretty good in my opinion. But then okay, you got some more world building, got a prequel. Then Modern Warfare 3 is like, okay, we're going to the future and we're going to kind of tease BO6. And then BO6 was like kind of the game everything was leading towards in a sense. And then that's not kind of what happened. It's like what John said, where it's like, actually, hold on, we're going to fetch quests for 2 maps. For something we probably also won't see again, the Sentinel Artifact at BO7, and BO7's like the actual game with fantastical locations. Hopefully, I guess only time will tell. I think the gameplay, if anything, could hopefully carry BO7 altogether.